Did you know that Steve Jobs was given away for adoption at birth? That he grew up believing his sister was actually his mother? And that his biological father was a convicted felon who escaped from prison? Well, today we're going to learn how these events, and many more, affected his personality and shaped him into one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs of our time. But before we start, I have a little homework for you. Before you start watching, make sure you turn on captions. This way, you can read along with the text that appears at the bottom of your screen. You can also change the speed of the captions if you want them to go faster or slower. If you don't understand a word, look it up on an online dictionary. Alright, now let's get started. Alright, so the first part of this lesson is dedicated to Jobs' early life. Let's jump right in. Early life, family. So Steve Jobs was born on February 24th, 1955 in San Francisco, California. His biological mother was a 23-year-old graduate student named Joanne Scheifel. She had met his biological father, an electronics technician named Abdel-Fattah Jandali, at a political activist group meeting. They were only together for a few months, so when Joanne found out she was pregnant, they decided to give the baby up for adoption, infancy. And because Joanne had recently moved in with her parents, Jobs never knew that Abdel-Fattah was his biological father. He believed that his adoptive parents, Paul and Clara Jobs, were actually his real parents. Paul worked as an engineer, and his wife was a legal secretary. When Jobs was just 4 days old, they took him home to live in their Mountain View, California home. They also adopted his biological sister, who was 6 months old. At the time, they told Jobs that his sister was actually his older brother, which is why Jobs believed his sister was his mom, until he was 20 years old. I guess they didn't want a baby to be confused about the fact that his parents were also his brother and sister. Childhood. Jobs grew up in the suburbs. He attended elementary school, then middle school, and then high school. But when he was 13, his parents divorced. He chose to stay with his father, but since Paul lived far away from his friends and schools, Jobs enrolled at Homestead High School. He became interested in computers when he attended a class at a local electronics store where he learned how to program. But despite being passionate about computers, Jobs wasn't very good at school. He was pretty lazy and had trouble focusing. He couldn't find his passion or purpose. But all that changed when he met Steve Wozniak, a guy who was super smart and extremely passionate about electronics. Jobs fell in love with computers because of Wozniak, and the two became really close friends. They would spend hours talking about computers. Homestead High. When he graduated high school in 1974, Jobs had no clue what he wanted to do with his life. He had spent so much time dreaming about computers that he hadn't prepared himself for the real world. He briefly attended a junior college, but he soon dropped out to work for Atari, a video game company. But after a few months, Jobs quit because he felt like he wasn't learning anything. Reed College. He enrolled at Reed College in Portland, Oregon, but he only attended classes for 1 semester. During his time at Reed, Jobs met a lot of interesting people, including his future wife, Laurene Powell. Jobs only completed 1 course, calligraphy, but he said that this class was probably the most important one he'd ever taken. According to Jobs, during his time at Reed, he discovered that he liked fonts, colors, and graphic design. He used what he learned in that class throughout his career, and he even admitted that some of the Mac's greatest features were inspired by the typography of his calligraphy class. But Jobs still ended up dropping out of Reed after the first semester. 1970 for 1985, pre-Apple. So, after leaving Reed, Jobs went to India to try and learn more about himself. But he came back with nothing but a beard and a loincloth. Once back in the States, Jobs went back to living with his mom, and he found a job as a designer at Atari. It wasn't exactly what he wanted to do. So, with the help of his friend Wozniak, he began designing his own computer called the Apple I Apple. In 1976, Jobs and Wozniak founded Apple Computer Inc. Their first product was the Apple I. Jobs got the idea for the name Apple from a magazine that had a picture of an apple on the cover. He thought the name was simple, memorable, and unique. Now, the Apple I was not a commercial success, but the second version, the Apple II, sold very well. After seeing how well the Apple II sold, Jobs and Wozniak hired some other guys and expanded the company. Now, while everything seemed to be going great, Jobs was losing interest in Apple. He had a hard time dealing with other people, and he often argued with Wozniak. Plus, he really wanted to make something new and different, but Apple was growing too fast for him to make those changes. So Jobs decided to leave Apple in 1985. Before leaving, he bought the rights to continue developing the Macintosh under his own company. 1985 to 1997. Next, computer. So Jobs tried to raise money for his new company, but no one believed in him. Only one guy gave him $210,000. So Jobs named the computer he designed Next, like the next big thing. While Jobs was working on the Next computer, he saw a movie called Toy Story. This was the first CGI movie ever made. And he realized there was a huge market for 3D animation. But most studios already had equipment for doing 2D animation. So no one rented the machines, and Jobs lost almost all the money he had. In order to pay off his debts, he agreed to sell the Next computer to a large manufacturer for $145 million. However, the deal fell through after the manufacturer found a cheaper machine that could do basically the same things as the Next computer. By this point, Jobs' reputation in the industry was ruined. No one wanted to give him another chance. So he had no choice but to find a regular job. Pixar and Disney. After a year, Ed Catmull, the head of Pixar, heard about Jobs' experience with 3D animation. And although no one else in Pixar wanted to hire Jobs, Catmull decided to take a chance. He hired Jobs as head of the company's new graphics division. Jobs spent several months training employees and helping the company transition into producing completely digital animations. Catmull put Jobs in charge of a small team tasked with creating a 3D rendering system for the company's next movie. But halfway through production, he removed Jobs from the project because he refused to follow instructions. Although he had a lot of trouble working with others, Jobs was a great mentor. While he was at Pixar, he mentored Edwin Catmull Jr. and helped him land a job at Disney. Catmull later described Jobs as a great teacher. 1997 to 2011. Return to Apple. In 1997, Apple was on the verge of bankruptcy, and they needed a savior. Jobs had just the right amount of experience, skills, and passion to save the company. So he returned to Apple as CEO. One of his first moves was to introduce the Mac OS X operating system, which significantly improved the stability and user-friendliness of Macs. Jobs also introduced the iMac, a colorful, all-in-one computer that reinvigorated the Mac lineup. Sales increased, as did profits. All right, so before we move on, I have a question for you. Can you tell me one thing that Jobs did to improve the quality of the Macintosh? Write your answer down somewhere. Now let's continue. In 2001, Jobs unveiled iTunes and the iPod. The iPod was revolutionary because it allowed users to easily carry around thousands of songs in their pockets. The iTunes Music Store followed soon after, and it gave users an easy way to buy new music. These products made Apple a lot of money, and Jobs became the richest man in the world for a few years. He continued to oversee the development of new Apple products until January 2011. Jobs resigned as CEO due to health problems. On October, he died from pancreatic cancer at the age of 56. All right, now it's time for you to check your answers. Did you say that Jobs created Mac OS X? If yes, you got it right. Innovations and designs. So, besides the products we talked about, Jobs also invented and designed a few other products, including the iPhone and the iPad. Innovations and designs. Apple I. The Apple I was a very basic computer that was meant to be built by hobbyists and tinkers. Despite its simplicity, it had advanced features such as a built-in keyboard and a high-resolution black and white monitor. It costs $666.66, and only 200 were ever made. Apple II. The Apple II was a major success for Apple. It was one of the first mass-produced computers, and it included color graphics, and a built-in cassette tape drive. Lisa, after the success of the Apple II, Jobs wanted to create a computer that would push the boundaries of technology. He developed the Lisa, which featured a full-fledged graphical interface, including windows, icons, a mouse, and a built-in screensaver. Macintosh. The Macintosh was revolutionary because it was the first personal computer to feature a full-fledged graphical interface. This made it much easier for people to use computers. Next, computer. The next computer was a high-end machine that was intended for use in universities and research labs. It featured a powerful Motorola 68,000 processor and a unique black and white color scheme. iMac. The iMac was a breakthrough product that combined a computer, a monitor, and a keyboard into a single all-in-one package. It was also available in a variety of vibrant colors. iTunes. iTunes was a software application that allowed users to play, organize, and buy music. It also served as the foundation for the iPod. The iPod was a portable, digital music player that revolutionized the music industry. It allowed users to carry around thousands of songs in their pockets and listen to them anywhere. iPhone. The iPhone was a smartphone that combined the functions of a phone, a camera, an internet browser, and a music player. It also featured a revolutionary multi-touch interface. iPad. The iPad is a tablet computer that features a large, touch-sensitive display and a wide range of applications. Personal life. Marriage. Jobs met his wife, Laureen Powell, while he was a student at Reed College. They married in 1988 and had 3 children together. Family. Jobs' children are named Reed, Aaron, and Eve. Jobs was a very private person, and he kept his family out of the public eye for most of his life. Philanthropy. Jobs was a major philanthropist, and he donated billions of dollars to various charities, including the American Red Cross and the Stanford University Medical Center. Honors and awards. Throughout his career, Jobs received numerous honors and awards, including the National Medal of Technology and Innovation and the Presidential Medal of Freedom in popular culture. Jobs has been the subject of numerous books, articles, and documentaries. Most notably, there is the 2015 film Jobs, starring Ashton Kutcher. See also, for more information about Apple and its products, see the articles Apple Inc. and list of Apple products. References. Footnotes. 1. Steve Jobs was given away for adoption at birth, and his biological father, Abdel Fattah Jendale, was a convicted felon who escaped from prison. 2. Jobs believed that his sister was his mother until he was 20 years old. 3. Jobs was only 13 when his parents divorced, and he spent a lot of time trying to find his passion. 4. Jobs and Wozniak became best friends after Jobs discovered his passion for computers. 5. The Apple I was not a commercial success, but the second version, the Apple II, sold very well. 6. Jobs left Apple in 1985 because he wanted to create something new. 7. Jobs had a hard time raising money for his new company, Next, but he eventually found investors. 8. The Next computer was not commercially successful, and Jobs' reputation in the industry was ruined. 9. Ketmel put Jobs in charge of a small team tasked with creating a 3D rendering system for the company's next movie. 10. Jobs returned to Apple in 1997 and became CEO. 11. Jobs resigned as CEO in 2011 due to health problems and died on October 5, 2011. Citations: Isaacson, Walter. Steve Jobs, Little, Brown and Company, 2011. Bibliography: Isaacson, Walter. Steve Jobs, Little, Brown and Company, 2011. External links: Apple Inc., Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. List of Apple products, Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. All right, so that's it for this lesson. As usual, you can download the full HD version of the video and the PDF version of the script with images and exercises on my website. Make sure you check it out. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.